Hi, I'm Brian Scroggins, and this is a story of my battle with cancer. Back in the fall of 2018, I'd been having trouble with anxiety and fatigue at work. I was feeling just really tired and unable to hardly get up and go do my job. I also had some random abdominal pains that I was going through. But in September, those pains began to intensify, and one night I went to the ER thinking that I was going to pass a kidney stone. It was that kind of pain. The following morning, they did exploratory surgery on me, and it was determined at that time that my small intestines were dying, a condition called ischemic bowel. At that time, the doctors gave my family and my wife some pretty grave news. The ischemic bowel, he said, would be fatal. To make things worse, it was caused as a complication from acute myeloid leukemia. Both the leukemia and the ischemic bowel were death sentences. I'd love to tell you that I immediately shrugged it off and that fear never entered my mind, but the truth is, for several days, I was on a ventilator, and then as the sedation began to wear off, the realization that a death sentence had been pronounced over me came flooding in. I'm so thankful at that time in the battle that while I was not even engaged in the battle for my life, that my wife and my children and a group of intercessors here at the Roads had already begun pulling down heaven for me. The first miracle occurred for me when those intercessors brought the need here to the Roads on a Wednesday night that I needed blood circulation returned back to my small intestines. Ischemic bowel bowed to the power of prayer that night, and to the doctor's surprise, I lived. As soon as I was stabilized, they transferred me to MD Anderson in Houston, Texas. Over the next few weeks, we were built up in our faith. We began to get kind of, when bad news would come to us, we'd automatically start shaking our head because we saw that God was working on our behalf. But just because God was working for us does not mean the attack of the enemy did not come. I was septic 4 different times with MRSA circulating in my bloodstream and E. coli circulating in my bloodstream, resistant strains that antibiotics were having a very difficult time to keep up with. I contracted fungal pneumonia. Fungal pneumonia is what 70% of AML patients die from. In the middle of my treatments, not at the end, some things that kind of stunned the doctors began to happen. My hair began to grow back in, and I was still taking a pretty strong dose of chemotherapy. And then I was on a liquid diet. My digestion was still not working from the ischemic bowel. It was still struggling a little bit, so I was only allowed to have liquids, and I'd already lost like 30% of my body weight. But I began to put weight back on. After only 2 rounds of chemotherapy, leukemia disappeared from my blood work. And then it disappeared from my bone marrow. And finally, it disappeared from my PET scan. And although my doctors were unwilling to confirm it, by every measurement, I was already cancer-free. I just want to thank all the people in my church and in our prayer team and really in the whole community who prayed with me at midnight and at 5 o'clock in the morning, who sent letters and words of encouragement via text and telephone calls. So many blessings that I can't even name all of them. But it's because of your prayer and because of your faith with ours and your generosity that God brought my family and I through this trial in our life, happy and well and blessed. And I'm here today to tell you that He is a God that hears your prayers, and I'm here to testify that He is a God that still heals.